Hi there. My name is Jessica Crow, and I am the founder of Apogy, which is a change management training and consulting group. And this is Change Leader Insights, which is our podcast where I am lucky enough to interview experts, academics, people who care about the topic of change management. And today I have with me Lesley Mattson, who is a vice president. She leads the enterprise change management practice with Peloton Group. Thank you so much for being here, Lesley.
Thanks, Jessica. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, so we're going to talk all things change management trends today. But before we do that, you've been with Peloton for about 13 years. Tell us your story, your background, how you got into change management, and a little bit about how you built the change management practice at Peloton Group.
Absolutely. So started my career really more in a technical way. I was doing technical implementations. I actually started working in a corporate environment where I was building intranets. So really focused on internal communication. From there, I started consulting, and that's when I got into the Oracle space, and I was developing Oracle solutions, and joined Peloton about 13 years ago, and had continued on in my career doing project management, and then really always just had this focus on how are we going to build successful solutions for our clients? How are we going to roll these out? How are we going to successfully get everybody to adopt these solutions? And kind of found my way into change management in a pretty natural way, and have been lucky enough to work on building out the practice, building out our team, and really focused on quality delivery from a change perspective.
Yeah, that is great. So I've been we've been connected for a while, and seeing your story and knowing your story, it's been really fun to get to know you and hear about your background and all of the things that brought you into leading the change management function within Peloton Group. And so you've got a pretty good pulse on what's happening across your clients as you're, overseeing the team that's providing change management support for these digital transformations. So, kind of what are you seeing today? What are some of the common challenges that organizations are facing as it relates to digital transformations, which are happening all the time, everywhere?
Right. Specifically what I'm seeing is, we have a set of clients who are looking to implement a SaaS solution. So software as a service. It's really a purpose-built solution that has all of the modern best practices built into the application. What that means is our clients have to shift the way that they're working in order to use these new modern best practices and really get into that future state. So, while the solutions are wonderful and they've been built so that you can implement in a faster timeline, you can get the return on your value really quickly, it does mean that there is work that has to go into changing the people and changing the way that they do their work. So really having that focus on people and business process is critical to the success of these programs. And, really thinking about it is, it's not just a technology implementation. You're changing your business processes and you're changing your people along the way in order to be fully successful with your implementation.
What are some of the most important factors then when you're planning for a digital transformation? So building on what you just explained, what would you recommend to clients, to other consultants? What should they be thinking about in that planning process?
Yeah, I always say change management starts day zero. I think that you really need to be thinking about the people and the impacts starting right from the beginning of the program. Oftentimes, we start with thinking about your metrics and what you're trying to change as an organization. Why are you doing this implementation? Why is it important to your organization? What are you, what are you doing with your people, and how are they going to be changing the way that they work? And getting that story written up front so that people don't even have the time or ability to create their own stories, right? You want to be driving the messaging. You want to be, pushing that messaging through the project team, through all of your impacted stakeholders throughout the course of the implementation, and allowing people to get in the boat and row along with you. They all need to know what that North Star is. They need to know, why it is that they're moving in a certain direction. And it's really critical to have those metrics defined early so that you can follow through and make sure that you're still on the right path.
Yeah, no, that's such a great call out. Going back to something you said, though, because this comes up a lot with people I've interviewed, clients I've worked with, it's that bringing in the change management lead at day one. Now, does that mean in best practice in your mind, the second the investment is made? Is it when you're getting close to rollout? Like, what does that day one look like? Because as you know, there's ebbs and flows, even if you're configuring and working through user acceptance testing, all of those things. What do you think is that critical inflection point of inserting change management into the project?
I think there should be an element of it, even pre-kickoff. So there
Yeah.
should be just, it doesn't mean that you're hiring a whole army of change managers before you kick off. It's just having the idea of of change management, and weaving that into your kickoff story. So
Hmm.
having that story kind of set from day one for your implementation team, and then maybe you ramp down for a little bit, you come back again, and you're really building out the communication plan, and all of the communication that's going to go along with it, thinking about engagement and facilitating the engagement practices as best as you can throughout the organization. I am a huge proponent of change agent networks. I think
Yeah.
building out a network and having a network that's active and understands what's happening with the project, and they're really your eyes and ears on the ground. If you have different locations, different business units who are going to be using the system, you need to get the word out, and you want to get it out as organically as you can through their peers, through their networks, and the best way to do that really is to use a change agent network to do so.
Yeah. What's interesting about the change agent network, and it's funny because, and I'm sure you've seen this too, nobody wants to be called a change agent. We have to give them a different name, even though like we know you're a change agent. But I've found that it's been a more effective tool or strategy with people working in distributed environments. If we were all together in the same space, you'd still want to have that. But now that people work in different locations, and that's always been the case, but more people are working home remotely. Have you found that too with your clients where, the emphasis on building those localized, hyper local relationships are even more important because of how spread out certain, clients can be?
Absolutely. And, it also helps that oftentimes different, let's say business units or different locations, they really have a different view of the business. They may
Yeah.
be, performing work in a little bit of a different way. So to have this common group come together and build out the messaging that's going to work across the different business units, and really kind of make sense to those team members is really critical. Something I've also experienced is people are a little bit nervous to start the change agent network too early because
Yeah.
they don't feel like they know enough about the program. They don't know what decisions are being made. Maybe there are some core decisions that still have to be made about how this solution is going to be
You want to
configured.
be certain about things.
And
Yeah.
exactly, they want to be so certain. And, I say to that, get started with what you know, get started getting into the routine, getting into the rhythm, and let them know that there are still open items to be decided. And maybe they're big open items, but
Yeah.
to bring them along this journey with you as early as you can is going to do nothing but, help you be more prepared in the future.
Absolutely. And I see that time and again as well. And it's either that wanting to be certain. The other thing that comes up, and maybe you're seeing this too, is that they're worried they're going to get feedback that they can't do anything with. And it's all about that coaching and setting expectations early on throughout the process. Are you seeing that as well in terms of kind of the challenge and the opportunity, and not being afraid of bringing
Right.
those change agents in?
Right, right. I think oftentimes people will say, well, I don't want to open up requirements. I don't want to hear what their
Right.
requirements are because we've already locked down our requirements. I would
Yeah.
say, let's hear their concerns and let's hear where they're coming from. And then we can work together to understand how are we going to approach this in the system, right? This is going to come up at some time. So let's
Yeah.
hear it. And then maybe there is a business process change, or maybe there is some, different way to train or different way to communicate what's coming to meet the needs. But let's not just block them out and say we don't want to hear from you, because obviously they're a part of your organization, and
Yeah.
it's important to get that feedback and hear what they have to say.
And yeah, and it is, it's that's where change management has the value. It's, you may not be able to change the business process or what's happening, but that's where you level up how much change management, how much training, how much education that you're providing to those end users. And they're such a critical force, and they end up becoming the leaders of the change, the influencers within that change agent network that is so vital to the rollout and success of the project. One thing you'd mentioned too, related to success factors and coming up with KPIs at the outset, it's hard to do, as you know, at least for me, it's been hard because you have like lofty goals in terms of what you want to be able to measure. If you were to sort of kind of scale back and think about really what are the true success factors, or at least, at a minimum, what should you be looking at? What do you think you'd recommend to people watching this? Like number one thing to focus on in terms of success factor?
Yeah. I mean, obviously for me from a change management perspective, I want to make sure that all of the employees who are impacted by the solution know how to do their job and can successfully do their job from day one. They aren't frustrated. They aren't misunderstanding what needs to be done. They've been fully trained. They know how to use the system. Ultimately, to me, if that happens, that is a success.
Absolutely.
On top of that, would I love to be able to measure all of these great metrics? Are we closing the books faster? Are we getting invoices out the door faster? Are we, days sales outstanding? Is it going down? So all of these great metrics that we gather up front that we know the business is focused on, it's wonderful to be able to come back and report out on how we're doing on all of those things. It is difficult to do, and it can be, it's process. Oftentimes we look at change management, we say, well, change management ends the day of go live. It's like, in order to measure everything and to come back to those KPIs, you really need to think about change management post go live. How are things going a month later, a quarter later, even a year later? And what improvements have we seen?
Yeah, that's really where the adoption happens, is after go live. You might have that initial, everybody's using it, but then, are they going back to their default ways of working a month or two down the road? Or are they creating workarounds because they just don't understand how to use the system? So yeah, it really is. It's up to that point, preparing, and then beyond that, that's really where it comes into play. Well, how can leaders ensure that, employees, as we think about everything we've talked about, how can a leader within an organization ensure, support their employees as they're figuring out how to use the system, that they're prepared for the changes that are coming down the pike? What are like one or two or three things that you'd recommend as a best practice, or something new that you're learning about or have seen work really well?
Yeah. Certainly strong leadership is critical to the success of any program. We have to have those leads who understand what's coming, what's changing, why it's changing, to really lead the way. They need to be that person in the front saying, we need to keep moving towards this North Star. We have a reason for it. I think being willing and able to make difficult decisions. Those leaders really need to have a focus on that. Changing people's day-to-day processes is difficult. Questioning why people are doing things in a certain way it's difficult to do that. Somebody may have been doing the same process for 20 years and they just say, well, I've always done it this way. We need people to come in and say, but why? Why are you doing it this way? What can we do better? How can we make this more seamless for you so that you're not, whatever these processes are that may not fit to the modern state of the solution.
And it's not only, and I'll let you finish in a second, but as you were saying that, it got me thinking about how it's not only understanding and asking that question, why are you doing it the way that you are, but it's having somewhat of empathy, compassion for, even if it's taking hours longer, it's more manual. There is some, people develop a sense of confidence when they are competent in their job. So even if you're saving them time and it's going to be more efficient and more accurate, there's that piece of, they'll get to there eventually, but having leaders understand that transit. Yeah. Like it's hard because they have to give up that piece of what they were doing that made them confident and effective in their job. So,
right. It's muscle memory. People have been doing this for a long time. They know how to do it. They're comfortable in it.
Yeah.
And sometimes leaders can come in and say, well, just change. And I look to those
Can't
leaders
you
and
see the
say,
benefits? Yeah.
put the hat on of the person that's been doing this for a long time and understand what they're going to go through to change these processes, and take that empathetic view, to understand it's, maybe it's just do it. Maybe that is the answer, but there needs to be the bridge to get you there. How are you going to get all of these employees to change their way of thinking, and how are you
Yeah.
going to bridge that gap?
Do you think there's room for leaders, or does it make sense to have leaders thinking more about what will employees do with their time, the newfound hours, or is that something that should happen organically? And the reason I ask that question is because I'm with the client right now and could use your advice, where they're going to be changing a process, reducing the amount of time it takes to do something. And in the client's mind, they're like, this is going to be great. They should be able to see the benefits of this. But I'm thinking, well, what are they going to do now? What are you going to do now with these resources you have? And I don't know if they're thinking that through all the way. So do you think that that's something that in change management, we should be coaching leaders to think more about that? Or is it, let the cards fall how they may? What do you think would be best?
I certainly think that from the early days, even if the leaders don't know exactly how they're going to fill the time of the employees, they need to have the story down that they are going to find more value added activities for
Yeah.
those employees post go live, post implementation. And that story needs to be set from day one in the kickoff, in, early days. The leaders need to say, listen, we know things are going to be changing. We know jobs are going to be changing. We know that the time that you are allocating to certain activities right now will be changing, but we're going to be using time that we get back on these value added activities. Maybe it's more analytics, maybe it's more, whatever that looks like for them. And even if they don't have the specifics, at least giving people the confidence to help you make the decisions, because they know that their job isn't in jeopardy, and that there will be there's something else that is going to be coming to them that will be helping them further their careers.
Which is a very important message, I think, for people to hear as digitization of process continues, AI continues to have a presence. I mean, there's going to be more of manual human-led processes that are replaced by technology. So having that conversation and the way that you just explained it, and having leaders at least tee it up, is so great, because it does reduce that fear related to, well, now what? Right.
Right.
Which is so
Right.
important, because that, well, now what, leads to resistance of a really great solution. And it's not, doesn't really have to do with anything related to the solution. So thank you for saying that. If you're watching this, listening to it, take note. That's a really important component. One more question for you, Lesley, or did you want to build on that?
I was just going to say, I love, there's a quote out there that I may get wrong here, but it's something to the effect of, whether you're communicating or you're not communicating, you're communicating, right?
Yes.
So whether you're saying it, you're not saying it, you're still giving a message. So
Yeah.
it's better to have that message up front, and communicate it the way that you want to, right?
Yes.
Because if you're not saying anything, then that's where the fear breathes.
Yeah.
That's where the fear comes from. And then people are less likely to adopt this new way of working, and more likely to get frustrated. So, recognize what's coming, and communicate.
Yeah, they'll create the stories themselves otherwise, and it may not be the type of stories that are supportive to a accelerated adoption. So
Exactly.
yeah, no, that's a great quote. Thank you. Last question for you then is, what do you like best about change management?
Oh, I think, it's every day I come into work and I have a different problem to solve.
Yeah.
People often think, well, don't you have a recipe card for change management? And I say, no, there's no recipe. We have, our methodology, and how we approach our work, but every single client is a little bit different. They have
Mhm.
culture of communication. They have a different culture of learning. They have a different culture of adoption. And to apply what we know as best practices, but be able to take from our clients and, really build out what that program is going to look like, that's going to meet their needs. I think that's really fun.
Yeah, I agree with you. That is what makes this job fun. And it's pulling from your toolkit what makes sense, but having that overall framework. Funny enough, it's really interesting to see project managers get into change management because they're like, wait a second, where does this happen in the process? They're so linear with how they roll things out. No offense to change management, project managers, you're all lovely and wonderful, but and the ones that I've worked with have had, it's been an interesting shift in their mindset, how they think about it, and sort of leveraging what you just described is where they're getting to, which is good. Well, wonderful. Anything else you'd like to share with people who are interested in getting into change management, who are currently implementing technology changes? Any kind of final word of advice or anything you'd like to share?
I think, you're welcome to look me up on LinkedIn. If you have
Yes.
questions, I'm open to answering questions. Certainly it's a wonderful career, and it's a wonderful discipline that is, I think, going to continue to just grow and change. And, it's an exciting place to be. So, if you're thinking about it, I'd say get into it. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lesley, for your time and for sharing your wisdom with Apogy's community. And Lesley is on LinkedIn, Lesley Mattson, Peloton Consulting Group. So yeah, thanks for everything today. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, you too, Jessica. Bye.